Fall came on quick. In like a matter of 2 weeks, we went from lush green past peak color to bare trees in a lot of areas right now. And they're supposed to have 6 to 8 inches of snow 2 hours north of here on Monday. So we got to get these sleds finished up. And I thought the F chassis was about done, but I came out here like a month ago and this thing decided to just vomit about 5 gallons of fuel all over the floor. So I had to rush, pull the gas tank off of it and save what fuel I could, try to figure out where the leak is from. Somehow managed to have a fuel line just completely sever, and it was the one at the bottom of the tank. So like I said, pretty much dumped out all the fuel that was in the tank, and I had to leave the doors open on the shop here for like 2 weeks just to get the smell out. Yeah, it was this guy down here on the bottom. Not sure how it managed to just completely crack in half like that. I guess it was just old, but yeah, it gives us an opportunity to get in there and replace everything. Probably should have done that from the beginning anyway, but now we definitely have a reason to. So while the tank's off and everything, I'm just going to go through and clean up the top of the tunnel. And then we're going to put on a 4.5 inch riser and some different bars that I had laying around. It's going to take a little bit of modification to get this riser to work, but I think we can do it. We have the tools, we just got to spend the time to get it done. So let's get after it. I think it's enough time spent cleaning that up. It's a hell of a lot better than it was anyway. So let's take another look at this riser. This came with that wrecked Renegade that I bought, though I'm pretty sure it's off of something newer, probably 2010, 2013, somewhere in that range. But it's going to take a little bit of modification to get it to work with the F chassis. I have it bolted to this old set of handlebars right now because we're actually going to hack that off there and then use this as part of the adapter so we can pivot this. But we're going to have to do a little bit of cutting on the existing steering stem before we can just bolt this on. So let's take a closer look at that. So the F chassis is weird in that the plate for the handlebars that it bolts to is on the front of the steering stem instead of being on the top. Most sleds that you're going to look at, this is going to be up here. Doesn't really matter, just kind of weird, I guess, that they did it that way. I'm not sure why they did it that way, but that's just how it is. So this is a little bit too wide to get that 4.5 inch riser to bolt on here, so we're gonna have to cut a little bit off each side there. You can see I already have it marked out, so let's grab the grinder and then just trim that up. Kind of goes without saying too, but grinding metal dust anywhere near your airbox or carbs, not a good idea. So at least tried to cover that up, but the carbs got to come off for rejetting and a cleaning before the season anyway, so not that big of a deal. But let's see if that fits any better now. Alright, well that gave us a little bit of room. I think we're going to have to do a little bit more modification to the riser itself. Right now we're hitting on this bar right here, So I think we're gonna go pop that in the mill and just try and take out, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch there. Just enough so that we can, right now it only pivots back about this far. I'd like to be able to, you know, get it back to about there. So I have to take a little bit of that out. I don't think that's really gonna compromise the strength of it that much. But I guess we'll find out. I'll meet you guys over at the mill. Alright, setup is completely suboptimal. I do not have a good clamp kit for this thing yet, so if you're one of those guys that gets off to the OSHA handbook, just look away for this part. See how many fingers we can lose. Alright, well, we're going to see if that's enough. My guess is we probably are going to have to take more off, but I'd rather come back and set it up again than take too much off right away in the beginning. So I just test fit it. We do have to take a little bit more off, and we actually have to do the same thing on this side as well. So let's go ahead and get that done. Should have enough clearance now to fit on there. Let's go test it. Got to give a shout out to the old Index Model 40H, first used to make parts for World War II back in the 40s, now just sitting in my garage. Hoping to learn how to actually properly use it when I have a little bit more free time. If any machinists watch this, I'm sure they're going to tell you that my setup was terrible, which it was. Probably not a safe thing to do. Number one way to hurt yourself with those things is just improperly secured work, so don't do what I do. Anyway, let's see if we have enough clearance to get this thing to fit now. I think that's good enough, because that's like straight up and down. And we'll be able to pivot up at the top here. If we have to pivot the bars back, we can. So I think we're going to run with that. Let me just bolt that in place real quick and give it a little bit of a test. So that looks like it's actually going to work. While I had the old bars clamped in there, I just cut them off. Gotta take that out and pop it in the lathe yet. We're gonna knurl it just so the riser has something to grab onto. And I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but we are using the bars off of the Wrecked Renegade as well. Got all this stuff sitting around here, figured I might as well put it to use, and then beats the hell out of the original handlebars. So I think that'll be nice. Only thing that I'm kind of worried about is the brake cable having enough slack, because as far as I know, at least I don't know where to get extensions for those, for the mechanical ones. This doesn't have a hydraulic brake on it. And at this point in the year, I am not converting the chain case over. Just too close to winter, and I got too much other stuff to do. So I did kind of measure it, and I think it's going to fit, but we'll just have to see. The rest of it's not going to be a problem, because throttle cable and wiring, obviously I can extend all those. And I'm sure when it comes down to it, I could probably figure out a way to fit another or a different longer brake cable in there. Just take some thinking, but man, the F chassis is just a goofy looking machine. Definitely a far cry from the S and the ZX. Alright, let's pull that bottom piece off, take it over the lathe, and get that cleaned up and knurled. Well, there's our bottom pivot. Knurling on the right side turned out a lot better than the knurling on the left. It's a lot rougher. On the left, I must not have been aligned perfectly, but still rough enough for the aluminum to grab it, so better than nothing. Still learning how to use all these old machine tools. This old South Bend, I think it's a Series O, it's a 1923. And like I said, the mill is a 1940 something, so just happy to have them, but like I said, still learning how to use them. Well, now before we can put the bars back on, we have to go through, replace all the fuel lines, get the tank back on, and the cowling dash, whatever you want to call it, that's got to go back on. So let's get some fuel line in here and get these rotten old lines replaced. So we got the engine tipped up and out of the way enough anyway to access the fuel pump. Kind of a pain in the butt to get to, but there she is. Well, right in here, I don't think we're going to replace the pump. It works just fine. I might regret that later, but right now I don't really see any reason to replace it. So we're just going to go ahead and do the lines. Now, I've got enough fuel line to do the actual fuel lines, but the impulse lines here, or the vacuum lines that actually operate the pump, those you can't use normal fuel line for. They have to have the rigid wall stuff. I don't know if it's got like Kevlar in there. I think it's something like that anyway, but prevents lines from collapsing if they're under vacuum, which obviously those are going to be. And I do have some of that here, but I don't think it's actually the right diameter. So before we go any further, I'm going to check that, and if I don't have any, I'm going to go order some. I ended up pulling out the whole fuel pump assembly. Didn't have a whole lot of room to work in there, and there was only 2 bolts to get it out, so it just made more sense to pull it. But this makes a lot more sense now that I can actually see it. It's just 2 of the same pumps stacked on top of each other. Makes sense. 2 petcocks, 2 sets of fuel lines, 2 pumps feeding each individual carb. So different from the 95 that's sitting over there. I'm pretty positive that one's only got 1 pump on it, but I'm not 100% sure. Once we dig into that one a little bit more, we'll find out. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get this assembly cleaned up, change the lines out, and toss it back in there. Kind of boring stuff, so I'm going to turn you guys off for a little while. Took a few days, but there we go. Got new poly lines and new braided lines. We're good to go. Let's bolt this thing back in. Did take a little bit of time and cleaned out the bottom of the belly pan while I had the pumps out of there, but definitely looking better than it was, so let's get these bolted back in. So you probably heard me say it a million times. I've never rejetted the carbs after the hack delete, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. What I found on the internet says they're on a 340 on the magneto side and a 350 on the clutch side and a 40 pilot, so that's what we're going to run with. If it doesn't look good, we'll change it again, but what was in here was a 360, and if I remember correctly, there's also a 360 on the clutch side. So we'll try running them offset like that. That seems to be the way that most guys recommend doing it. Instead of running like a straight 340, run a little bit heavier on the clutch side. At least that's what I've been reading. So like I said, we're going to give that a shot and see what happens. Alright, I wasn't going to show too much more of this, but some interesting stuff came up. So this is the clutch side carb, which is supposed to have a 350 in it after the jet change, and I opened it up and it already had a 350 in it. So this side, at least according to what I'm reading on the internet, should be the side that's running richer, but it had the leaner jet in it. So I think someone's definitely been in here before and just cleaned these out, and they probably went through them, and then when they pulled the jets out, probably just put them back in reverse order. That's all I can think of. I don't think it would have came from the factory like that. And the other interesting thing, I mean, I've been into these carbs before, but I don't think I ever noticed this. If the gaskets stick to one side or the other, I usually don't pull them up, just because I don't want to rip them, and they're typically reusable. But this one I just noticed was in here backwards. I mean, you have this hole lining up with this port, but I just pulled it out, and it was in there like this. I don't know how well you can see that, but you can see the little dimple in the gasket from being pushed up against that port there. So, and I know I didn't do that, and like I said, the way that this was stuck down, it was stuck pretty hard to the bottom side of the carb. So, and that was just in these, like, I don't know, probably about a month ago. I don't think it would have had time to indent the gasket like that, or stick like that. So I don't know if it was a group of kids that had this thing before I did. Yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting. Like I said, this was supposed to have the richer jet in it, had the leaner jet in it, so we're still going to flip them. We're going to run the 350 in the clutch side and the 340 in the mag side and see how she likes that. I'm sure we'll be messing with this all winter long. We'll probably have to change it 2 or 3 times, but that's the way she goes, right? So, alright, let's get it back together. Alright, we took care of some of the more boring stuff, got the pipe back on, got the belt back on. I replaced the throttle cable just because the oil cable, or the oil pump cable, was fraying at the end. I didn't want that to end up breaking and then, you know, be completely starved of oil at like wide open throttle or something like that. So, ordered one of those and popped it on there. I still have to go back and adjust the oil pump, get that set right. It's pretty easy. There's a mark on the arm and a mark on the oil pump body, and you just have to make sure that they're lined up at idle. Should be easy enough to do. I'm actually thinking about converting this thing to premix. Oil pumps just make me nervous, especially when they're 30 years old. So, yeah, let's see if we can get the bars put on next. That's the one thing that I am kind of waiting to do here, excited to do. I want to get those on, make sure everything's going to fit cable lengthwise, and then got some powermadd handguards that I'm going to throw on there and see how those look. So let's start doing that. So you just watched me put on the right side handguard there, and this kit comes with absolute bare minimum hardware. I guess it is kind of like a model specific kit, so you might want to pay attention to that if you are ordering one. But you know, with a sled this old, there's nothing that's, that I could find that's actually specifically made for it. And like I said, I'm still running the just a cable operated brake, mechanical brake. I don't have a fluid reservoir, it's not hydraulic. So this kit actually wants you to use the clamp that would be on your brake handle or brake lever / fluid reservoir. So it doesn't come with a bottom clamp. So I'm just going to use one of the spare clamps that I have from all the old sets of bars I have laying around, and we'll make that work. But just something noteworthy. Like I said, if you're looking at ordering one of these, you might want to check the fit because it comes with damn near next to nothing, including bolts and stuff used to actually mount it. And I'm actually not using the hardware that it came with because I don't think the hardware that it came with is stainless, so I'm using my own. Let's get this other side put on and call her a day. So I just want to make sure that those are nice and symmetrical before I go snugging down the hardware. And I mean, that looks pretty good to me. Well, I've had a few concussions in my life, so who knows, might be a little bit off. But yeah, I think that mountain strap is kind of throwing it off, and so is the vinyl cover not really being on there correct either. I might take that off there. I don't know if I really like that. Yeah, I might pull it off and get a different grab bar, mountain handle, whatever you want to call it, toss something else on there. But for now, that's good enough. So I think I'm going to go ahead and tighten those down, and that'll be the end of it. Well, there you can at least get a good idea of what the finished product looks like. Not too much left to do, but it's all boring stuff. Try as I might, there's just no way to make carb tuning and electrical work interesting. So I do have to put the carbs back in there, put the key back into the dash, primer's got to go back into the dash, stuff like that. Bolt the seat down, but you guys don't want to see any of that anyway. But once I get this thing running right and there's snow on the ground, you're obviously going to see it again. Did find a windshield for it, but that's probably only going to go on if I ever take this thing to vintage shows or something like that, because it's brittle as hell. And the first time I tap a tree or, you know, tiny branch hits it or something like that, it's definitely going to crack. And those things are so few and far between, and if anyone does have one they want to get rid of, you know, they're aware of what they have and they want like $80 to $100. Spoiler alert, when I bought that one, it was attached to another sled, so there's another project sitting back here in the shop that you guys will eventually get to see when we find out whether or not it runs. But that's going to be a project for later this winter. Got a lot left to do on the Everest and I want to get back to that. So now that we have all those fuel lines taken care of and the risers on and everything, like I said, once I finish all the other stuff that just needs to be buttoned up, she'll be good to go. And we can finally get back to the Everest and get that done before the snow flies. I know this video was kind of all over the place, but if you do have any questions about any of the parts that I installed, just drop them down in the comments there, and as usual I will be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. I have quite a few more videos in the works, but lost the whole month of September and most of October to stuff that I had to do with friends and family. That happens every once in a while, and work is just blowing up right now. I'm doing like 60-70 hour weeks and I am just running out of fuel here. I got a lot of shit to do at the house before winter hits too. Gotta get the yard cleaned up, chimney cleaned, stuff like that, you know, so I can safely burn wood this winter without burning my house down. You know, stuff like that that just needs to get done. That's keeping me from working on the projects. But rest assured there's more coming, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.